Well, if you've opened a newspaper, watched television, or rode the subway, chances are you've seen them. Wireless ads. The cell phone wars have started in earnest with the launch of Globalized Wind Mobile and its rebel cell to ditch the big three bullies for its cheaper, no-hassle service. It is on its way. Will the message resonate with consumers, and how can incumbents Rogers, TELUS, and Bell fight back? Here to discuss, we're joined by Dominic Caruso. He's the president and CEO of advertising agency BBDO Toronto, and Alan Middleton. He's an associate professor of marketing at Schulich School of Business. Well, thank you both for joining us today. So let's start off with wind. And Dominic, first question to you. How effective do you think this campaign is, and do you think it's going to resonate with consumers?
Well, there's certainly an audience for it. It's interesting. They're coming into the market playing the classic challenger brand position. And just like in a political campaign, their job is to say, look, up until now, people have been telling you, here's the way things are, and we're the new guy, and we're here to tell you that there's a different way of looking at the world. Vote for me and see how I'm going to change things. And they're doing that very well. And it obviously always works better when there is some angst in the market. There are pain points to poke at, and Wind has those to poke at, and they're poking away.
So, Alan, what's your view, the challenger here? How often is the challenger successful in these situations?
Depends how long they can sustain it. It's all very easy for a challenger to come in against the market where, as Dominic rightly says, there's big discontent. And what you've got to do is turn that discontent into two things. Number one, switch people over rather than, oh, hell, I'll stay where I am. So there's a lot of I'll stick with it. But the other key is once you've got them, hold on to them. Because the death knell in most of this industry, more than most, is churn. So if I get them and 6 months later, because I'm only there for price, I've switched to somebody else, you've just lost a lot of money.
Do you think that, Dominic, that Wind has some vulnerable spots? Because we're already hearing news out that maybe their plan isn't as competitive as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, they're starting out as the upstart with not a full package. I mean, they are very limited in terms of where they can offer coverage. And they also have to watch that they don't speak too much about things like roaming charges, that kind of thing, because once you're outside of the core zone, you are going to be experiencing roaming charges. So they've got they have some things to watch. But as time goes on, they'll expand their network and they'll be able to eliminate some of those issues too.
What's interesting about them is how aggressively young they've gotten, because their media buying's not just price stuff in the newspapers, and they're aggressively in television. And they're going for this group that's both most vulnerable to the kind of rebellion kind of approach, but also is most dissatisfied because they're the heavy users.
And they're using social media in a new way. I mean, I think that's what's really interesting about this as a campaign is I don't think we've seen social media brought into the mainstream advertising in the same way before, which again I think focuses on that younger audience. It also makes a lot of sense for them too, because right now, because of their coverage, it is more of an urban product. I mean, if you live in the suburbs with your family, this is probably not the ideal product. If you're a young person living downtown in Calgary or in Toronto, it's not a bad offer.
So how big a worry then is it to the Rogers, the Bells, and the TELUS? Are they going after the same demographic?
Oh, very much so. Because the idea is, number one, if you can get a chunk of those, you may be able to keep them for a long time, so the lifetime customer value is high. Secondly, they are heavy users. I mean, the interesting thing about the approach is, and this will be where Bell, TELUS, and Rogers come back at them, is their pricing's not devastatingly low. They're not really low ball like some of the others are going. So the vulnerability, if the big ones can get across the idea of here's the real numbers, they can amount to an effective defense. The danger is, of course, that they're with a target group that do see the big guys as manipulative.
Okay.
Yeah, the incumbents are really going to try as much as they can to use FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
FUD?
FUD.
Is that a
Fear,
term
uncertainty,
Definitely it is
Absolutely.
in our industry. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And you see it already in the current advertising that the incumbents are doing when they talk about reliability, that kind of thing. Again, it's very much like a political campaign. If you're the incumbent, you want to talk about, your record, how great you've been up until now. And that's what we see them doing when they focus on messages like reliability.
But do consumers really care about, in the sense that it seems to me they're having this fight in the courts right now, Bell, TELUS, Rogers, all suing each other over who can say they're the most reliable. Dominic, do people care about this?
I think in a large extent they are talking to themselves because I think with a lot of these issues they don't matter as much to consumers. Now, where they may matter more, because I think we have to always remember in wireless, there's two audiences. There's the business customer and the consumer customer. They're both massive. And there are certain issues like speed and reliability that are more important to a business user than to a home consumer. But in the main, I think even most business customers would say, I don't really have a reliability issue. It's not my key problem. But then again, as the incumbent, you want to reinforce what you think you've got to what you've got as strengths, and that's certainly one of them that they believe they have.
And don't forget, reliability is not just with one service. Reliability is across the ever-increasing range of services that I want. So reliability gets a little skewed. You know, am I reliable for the video feed? Am I reliable for the data or the voice feed? So it's all those. But you've got an 80-20 rule. 80% of the business comes out of the 20% of the population that, frankly, doesn't move around that much. So they're fairly predictable in terms of their demands.
You don't see many of them advertising, hey, we're the ones with the best customer service.
This way, it's been a challenge to all of them in this area. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who's hit the home run of customer service.
It's certainly an opportunity for a brand in this space, because here's what's going to happen is the consumer is going to increasingly get confused about product differences and service differences, because more and more it's going to start sounding the same. And the incumbents have no choice but to now start to say things that sound similar to what the new guys are saying. So in a world that is going to get more and more confused, somebody who can actually position themselves as excellent on customer service, that's a dimension that is totally different than what everyone else is talking about. It's a tough thing to live up to. They all want to do it. It's hard to do. But a brand that can really stand for customer service has a lot to gain.
But the other thing that will go on is packaging with their other services. Because the more they can lock you into the home phone, to the television, to other services, that will stick.
Okay, well, let's actually hear what Win Mobile is trying to sell consumers. We've got a tape.
Brave young architects of change. We tip our hats to you for speaking out against being scammed, hosed, and otherwise bamboozled. Your words shall live on in our hearts and in our phone plans.
All I said was I hate phone contracts, and here I am.
He fought for freedom.
I just asked for prepaid customers to be treated better.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Is this not, to me, in the world of cell phone ads in Canada, I think that's pretty innovative.
It's innovative. You know, the interesting thing about this is this, as Dominic will tell you, this took some time to produce, and they had it ready, obviously, to go on the assumption the approval was going to come through. So they had this all prepped. It's brand building. It's tapping that vein of I'm young, I use it a lot, I'm discontented.
But it's classic negative advertising. I mean, if this were a political campaign, that would be the Willie Horton ad.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
That's right. But that's the right strategy. When you're challenging, you've got to get people dissatisfied with what's currently going on, rather than lead with what's good about what you do.
I liken what they're doing as Wind is like the NDP of the wireless landscape.
I don't think
here's what I mean by that.
Anthony would say that.
In that, you know, there's only going to be a certain amount of the population that will actually go to that brand. Yet its effect on the entire landscape will be there, because I think what we've seen already is they have made some changes to what the other guys are offering. System access fees that have always been there with the incumbents. In November, they all disappeared. You know, that's not a coincidence. That's because there's a new player, you know, the NDP of this particular category, that's making some noise, and the others have to respond to that.
Yeah, your comment's good, though, because, you know, what's interesting is I expected this approach from Virgin when they entered, and they didn't take that approach. So this is, to me, what would have been fitting with the Virgin brand approach as a way in. They didn't do it.
What is their approach? A sort of hip?
Well, that's
cool
very interesting question. You know, they're a little bit all over the place.
And how much? I mean, because it's pretty impressive when you look at the quantity of what they're putting out there, the full-page newspaper ads, these TV ads. And how much does something like this cost, Dominic?
Well, it's a massive category. So this category, even before Wind came along, spends more than $250 million a year in Canada, and that's big, big money. And, you know, I guess what I can say to anyone in your audience is, I hope you like wireless ads, because you're going to see a lot more of them. There's a lot more to come.
If you're a shareholder of Rogers, Bell, or TELUS, do you like to see all of this?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of value in having a customer. As Alan said, if you can keep a customer for a long time, this is a lifetime value business. So they're basing everything on what is that customer worth to me over a long period of time? Because I hope that once I get them, I will be able to keep them for a while, that it'll be too much of a pain to switch to somebody else. And the acquisition cost. So this is a business that's all about metrics. They have a lot of numbers measuring everything, and they spend a lot of money to get one customer.
So what are the numbers? I mean, what do we have evidence of the effectiveness of them? I mean, I guess that's what I'm getting at. Even in other industries, for instance.
Well, no, there's one reason when you see advertisers spend, 60, 70, 80 million dollars a year, is it's driving business. That's the only reason they're doing it.
The other thing it's driving is not just conversion brand to brand, which is what Wynn's about, but it's driving the dominance of this form of communication, so that everything you do in communication needs to go through the mobile. And that's where the money is for these organizations, because the more I can stuff video down the pipe as well as data, as well as audio, the more money they make.
But there's hundreds of millions of dollars that are spent and are going to be spent. Does it really impact? How much of an impact do you think it'll make on the bottom line?
It makes an impact in terms of the shifts upwards, but honestly, it's a total cost relative to the putting in the system, relative to managing customer service, as you said. It's actually not a huge amount.
What about some of these other ads, like the TELUS one, for instance? It's kind of small here, but it's the hippo, the animals. Those obviously were inherited from the ClearNet acquisition a number of years ago. What do you think, Dominic, of the animal focus? Does it work for you?
I think what they've had going for them is consistency. And in marketing, there's a lot to be said for being consistent. I would say that for many marketers, it doesn't matter how great your strategy is. If you're changing all the time, you're not doing yourself any good. So, what we give them credit for is tremendous consistency over a long period of time. I think the downside to their approach is their specific messaging, I would say, doesn't get through that well, because a lot of people would think, I've seen that ad before, even though it might be communicating something new, like Go Big in that ad that you just referred to. It looks so similar to all the other ads that they've seen from that advertiser that the distinctiveness of that particular message isn't getting through.
I mean,
TELUS created warmth and cuteness at a time that the two major competitors, neither Bell nor Rogers, had it. Bell and Rogers communications improved immensely since then. And I think actually the TELUS approach may be a little past its sell-by date.
Well, that's my feeling. My own. We have this discussion in the office, and some people love it. I'm thinking, I'm not a hippo. I'm not a goat. Stop talking to me like that. But my sense is, I don't see.
You're no fun.
But I want to up the game a little bit.
Yep.
Don't you think that it's a bit the whole sector's a bit stale?
I mean, there's always a trap. Dominic knows this so well. Is if you become totally feature-oriented, you create a vulnerability because you've got no brand connection.
But it's
if you
metaphorical,
become totally brand connection without the feature, you miss out on the new opportunities, the new pricing, the new stuff that people are doing. Getting that balance is really hard.
But it's the metaphorical versus the direct here, right? Dominic?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is that as more of the hardware features start to be the same, that everyone's offering an iPhone. And that no contracts you can get from a lot of different players. There's going to be more and more similarity to what the products are. That's where the brand part really does come in, because as things get more confusing, people will start to just say, which brand do I like the best? Because I think at the end of the day, they're going to be very similar in what they offer, but you're either going to be somebody who likes the animal thing that TELUS is doing, or you like the proletariat approach that Wind is doing. You're going to identify as a person with one brand more than another, and that's really what's going to make the difference in the future.
And there to the shareholder is the real risk.
Okay.
Because the more similar it becomes, the more commoditized, the number of people looking for price alone will move up from its usual 10% to a greater number.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to leave it there, but a great conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. That was Alan Middleton. He's Assistant Professor of Marketing at the Schulich School of Business, and Dominic Caruso. He's President and CEO of BBDO Toronto. And a reminder, we want to hear your thoughts on this, so send us an email at middaymarkets@bnn.ca. Thanks for watching.